Hawksby and Tony Cascarino here on talkSPORT at 4. Adiola Depot and Gabby Agbonlahor will bring you Drive Then live football from 7 with Arsenal Palace and the Sports Bar taking your calls. Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy at 10 after that match. We'll hear from some of the gaffers after 3:30. They've all been chatting to the press today. A mighty 12 press conferences, a very busy day, so they can all have a proper Christmas break. But let's look at some of the transfer stories of the day. One is certainly livened up in the last hour when it has emerged that another club is in the frame for Antoine Semenyo. Ben Jacobs is keeping an eye on this for us. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben. Guys.
Yeah, so Chelsea had not really been mentioned, but here we are. They're suddenly in the mix with a number of other clubs. Tell us more.
Yeah, on Monday, Chelsea made an initial inquiry for Antoine Semenyo, and that means that all of the big six clubs have actually had some contact, although Arsenal are kind of ruling themselves out in the winter market. And Chelsea's position is clear that if they move, it's bringing forward summer business. We'll now have to understand whether or not they trigger the release clause. For Semenyo, he's expected to stay within the Premier League. The clause is 65 million, and my understanding is that it can be paid in 3 instalments. And now from Chelsea's point of view, they have to decide, is he the kind of attacker they need? Because the left is well stocked. Jamie Gittins, Alejandro Garnacho, technically Mikhailo Mudryk, Tyreek George and Giovanni Quenda arriving from Sporting in the summer. On the right-hand side, only really Pedro Neto. So if Esteval Willian is a 10, then maybe they feel there's room for Antoine Semenyo. But it is a surprise, and now we have to wait and see whether Chelsea's initial inquiry leads to anything more substantial.
What about the Egyptian Omar Marmoush?
Yeah.
Tottenham are reportedly having interest in him, the 26-year-old. Hasn't really got going at Manchester City, has he? So is that a possibility, that move, do you think?
As far as I'm aware at the moment, yes, Tottenham are looking at a new number 9 in 2026, not necessarily in January. No reason at this stage to believe that Omar Marmoush is that leading name. There could maybe more be a scenario in the summer where Ivan Toney, who won't leave Saudi Arabia mid-season, could come into Tottenham's thinking if he decides to leave Saudi Arabia at the end of the season. I think Manchester City feel that Omar Marmoush will continue to grow in the Premier League. My information is that they don't want to sell, and they believe that he fulfills 2 roles. 1, the kind of old Kevin De Bruyne position, and 2, cover/competition for Erling Haaland. Are more likely, if we're talking about Tottenham and Man City business, is still Savinho. And if a situation arises where Antoine Semenyo picks the blue half of Manchester, keep an eye on Tottenham making a fresh approach for Savinho. But I'm told it's all quiet at the moment between Spurs, Manchester City and Omar Marmoush.
We were talking about Mo Salah a little bit earlier on. It seemed unlikely he was now going to go in January with AFCON in full flow and him sort of scoring last night, getting the winner. Where are we at with that at the moment? Do you think because of the injury to Isak, it's less likely he's going to go?
Yeah, we've heard some suggestion that Harvey Elliott might be recalled from Aston Villa, although there's no formal clause there. And of course, that Liverpool could enter the race as well for Antoine Semenyo. They certainly held some substantial talks in November, but they haven't been that active since. So Alexander Isak's injury is likely going to change things. And I think Liverpool will say plan 1 is an internal solution of Salah comes back and plays, and then they reassess his future in the summer. And of course, plan 2, and they can do both plans, is that you go out in the market and you add another attacker. But at the moment, I'm led to believe that Liverpool want and expect Mo Salah to stay through the winter market, and they're hoping that AFCON kind of clears the air. And that might partially, with Szoboszlai also able to play on the right-hand side, be why Liverpool have been a bit hesitant to pull the trigger on Antoine Semenyo, because if he arrives in January, you would think Mo Salah arrives back from AFCON thinking he may get even less game time if Semenyo was used on the right-hand side. So Liverpool have got some big decisions to make, but at the moment, I'm led to believe after Isak's injury, it's now looking far less likely that Salah leaves mid-season, because even if he found, for an example, a Saudi club, I think Liverpool would likely block any move mid-season.
Another Saudi club, Ruben Neves has declined a new contract. Al Hilal Manchester United are believed to be interested.
Yeah, Newcastle and potentially sort of some Real Madrid have been showing an interest as well, Ben.
Yeah, it's actually Juventus as the club outside of England that I'm told have had the most concrete approach. Real Madrid have discussed Neves internally, but they've not made any contact with Al Hilal or the camp of Ruben Neves. Manchester United have discussed Neves internally, and then you have several other clubs, for example, Bayern Munich and Newcastle, that have held a historical interest in Neves, but we're talking about when he was at Wolves rather than right now. And Neves wants to play Champions League football. It doesn't have to be this season, but he wants to join a project that can give him that. And because of his age at 28, he feels that now might be the right time to leave Saudi Arabia. But when we say now, it's not a given it will be January. It could be as a free agent in the summer. And Al Hilal are hoping that contract ticks down and they can change his mind and somehow persuade him to sign a new deal between now and when the World Cup starts. But Neves at the moment is exploring options. If Al Hilal were to sell in January, they would want a fee, I'm told, in excess of 15 million, which is still quite high because he's got less than 6 months by the time the window opens left on his contract. And yes, if Manchester United choose to add a midfielder in January, Neves and also Conor Gallagher could be two to watch. But if they wait, then, of course, we're talking about Elliot Anderson, Carlos Baleba, Adam Wharton, Angelo Stiller. And I think at the end of all of this, whether it's January or the summer, Manchester United's priority is clear. They want two new elite midfielders, one that's a defined number 6 and one that is more box to box.
And just finally, Scotland Rangers have made a move, it seems, for Josh Windass at Wrexham. He had a couple of good years there back in the day, didn't he?
Yeah, this was an exclusive that we broke this morning. So Josh Windass only joined Wrexham, remember, from Sheffield Wednesday, ultimately as a free agent after his contract was terminated. And that was in the summer. He scored 6 goals in the Championship. But my understanding is that Windass is actually open to a move away. And Rangers have made an initial inquiry for a loan. This is, of course, driven by Danny Roll, who managed Windass for 2 seasons at Sheffield Wednesday. And Windass is on record as saying tactically, Roll is the best manager that he's ever worked with. Rangers could, of course, offer the likelihood, long run, of season-on-season European football, whereas Wrexham at the moment, 15th in the Championship, maybe not going to get another back-to-back promotion. So I think given Windass's age, he would consider a return to Rangers. The hard part is convincing Wrexham to sanction a mid-season exit because he's been important in terms of his goals so far for the Welsh club this season.
Ben, thanks as always. We'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, guys.
There we are. There's Ben Jacobs with the very latest from the transfer market. It's all unfolding at talkSPORT.com. We've got the old transfer ticker, and that will be going like the clappers until the window closes. So, were you ever a January move, Cass?
No, I went in March.
Yeah.
And when I was saying that, I left Marseille in December, but because there was the break.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that. We're going to talk about winter breaks because you had sort of different periods of your career where you played all over Christmas, and we're going to be chatting about that.
Yeah.
And then in France, of course, you came home to watch football.
Yes. 6 years of watching football.
Yeah. Anyway, Tony Cascarino's with us. We're going to hear from all the managers very, very shortly as we build up to the Premier League games over Christmas. They've been having their say this afternoon. They've kind of got it out the way today so they can go and enjoy a couple of days with their families. So that's all coming up. And then we'll hand over to Adeola Depot and Gabby Agbonlahor, who will bring you Drive. But we'll get the news headlines next.